Hi guys, this is your girl Wakeji Kamore and welcome to Reflections by Wakeji Kamore. Thank you so much for tuning in and for following through with this Bible summary. Good morning, good afternoon or good evening depending on the time that you get to listen to this. And even as you listen, please remember to share with your family and friends. Please bear with my hoarse. I don't know whether it's a hoarse voice or a low spirit. I feel like I have the lowest energy I've ever had. I have a little bit of a flu, and I was hoping that when I wake up and have some tea, that my voice is going to get better. But this is where we are at, and I will not let the flu stop me from doing what God has called me to do. Also, a small point of correction. Yesterday, I mentioned in yesterday's podcast, I mentioned that Miriam was Moses' sister-in-law, when in fact, she was his blood sister. So please just take that correction, note it, and just remember that Miriam was actually Moses' sister. And it makes sense now that they were complaining about the brother being the leader that people knew. And then they were like, but we're also brothers, we can, And also Moses was the youngest, so... yeah, they were just like, Ati, why are you the leader and why are we not? Anyway, so yeah, that's that. Today we're going to be looking at Numbers chapter 13. And in this chapter, the Lord speaks to Moses after they leave Hazeroth and settle in the Paran desert. He ordered him to send spies to explore Canaan, and that is the land that he had promised. So let's get into it. I'll be reading chapter 13, and then I'm going to actually start off with chapter 14 as well. I'm going to read 9 verses in chapter 14, just so that we can wrap up the story nicely, and then we can pick it up from there tomorrow, from verse 10 of chapter 14. Anyway, let's do that. I'll be reading from the easy to read version. So yeah, follow through. So it says, the Lord said to Moses, send some men to explore the land of Canaan. I will give this land to the Israelites. Send one leader from each of the 12 tribes. So Moses obeyed the Lord's command and sent out the Israelite leaders while the people were camped in the desert of Paran. So in the next 15, about from verse 4 to 15 is actually just the names of the leaders that were chosen. So it was a leader from every tribe. And just to note, there were 12 in total, and Caleb was one of them. He was from the tribe of Judah. And then there was Joshua, who is also called Hoshea, from the tribe of Ephraim. Just note, there are those two and then 10 others from the other tribes. I'm not going to read the names. So the above were the names that names of the men that Moses sent to look at the study of the land. And Moses called Hoshea, son of Nun, by another name. He called him Joshua. So when Moses was sending them to explore Canaan, he said, go through Negev and then into the hill city. See what the land looks like. Learn about the people who live there. Are they strong or are they weak? Are they few or are they many? Learn about the land that they will live in. Is it a good land or a bad land? What kind of towns do they live in? Do the towns have walls protecting them, or are the towns strongly defended? And learn other things about the land. Is the soil good for growing things, or is it poor soil? Are there trees on the land? Try to bring back some of the fruit of the land. And that was the season when the first grapes were supposed to be ripe. So they went to explore the country. They explored the area from the desert of Zin to Rehob and then to Lebo Hamath. They entered the country through Negev and went to Hebron. The town of Hebron was built 7 years before the town of Zoan in Egypt. Ahiman, Sheshai, and Talmai lived there. These men were the descendants of Anak. Anak were like the giants. Then the men went to Eshcol Valley. There they cut off a branch from the grapevine that had a bunch of grapes on it. They put that branch on a pole, and 2 men carried it between them. They also carried some of the pomegranates and figs. And that place is called Eshcol Valley because the men of Israel cut off the bunch of grapes from there. The men explored the country for 40 days and they went back to the camp. The Israelites were camped near Kadesh in the desert of Paran. The men went to Moses and Aaron and all the Israelites. They told Moses, Aaron, and all the people what they saw and showed them the fruit from the land. The men told Moses, we went to the land where you sent us. It is a land filled with many good things. Here is some of the fruit that grows there. But the people living there were very powerful. The cities are very large and strongly defended. We even saw some of the Anakites there. The Amalekites live in the Negev. The Hittites, Jebusites, and Amorites live in the hill country, and the Canaanites live near the sea and by the Jordan River. Caleb told the people near Moses to be quiet. Then Caleb said, "We should go up and take up the land for ourselves. We can easily take the land." But the people who had gone with them said, "We cannot fight against those people. They are much stronger than we are." So those men gave a report that discouraged the people. They said, "The land we saw is full of strong people. They are strong enough to defeat everyone who goes there. We saw the giant Nephilim people there." These are the descendants of Anak that came from Nephilim. "We felt like grasshoppers. Yes, we were like grasshoppers to them." That's the end of chapter 13. I'm just going to read 9 more verses in chapter 14. And it says, "That night, all the people in the camp began shouting loudly. The Israelites complained against Moses and Aaron. All the people came together and said to Moses and Aaron, 'We should have died in Egypt or in the desert. Did the Lord bring us to this new land to be killed in war? The enemy will kill us and take our wives and children. It will be better for us to go back to Egypt.'" Okay, man, listen to these guys. How quickly they have forgotten. These guys are just forgetful humans. I'm annoyed. They've forgotten the slavery that they went through. They have also forgotten how God saved them. Anyway, verse 4 says, "Then the people said to each other, 'Let us choose another leader and go back to Egypt.'" What? Moses and Aaron bowed low to the ground in front of all the people gathered there. Joshua and Caleb became very upset. Joshua, son of Nun, and Caleb, son of Jephunneh, were 2 of the men who explored the land. These 2 men said to all the Israelites gathered there, "The land that we saw is very good. It is a land filled with many good things. If the Lord is pleased with us, He will lead us into that land, and He will give that land to us. So don't turn against the Lord. Don't be afraid of the people in the land. We can defeat them. They have no protection, nothing to keep them safe. But we have the Lord with us. So don't be afraid." And basically, that's where I will fikisha for today. Let me just say what my takeout is. So first, the spies toured the land for 40 days. And when they came back, they brought samples of what the land had to offer with them. The grapes were so large that they had to be carried on thick poles, swinging between the shoulders of 2 men. As in, that's just how great these grapes were. But when they reported that the land was indeed a land flowing with milk and honey, they fixed their mind on the giants that inhabited the land. The people who inhabited Canaan lived in large fortified cities. They were aggressive, they were used to war, and they were well armed. 10 of the spies saw themselves as grasshoppers. So they told the rest of the camp that conquering the land was an impossibility, that God had brought them on a fool's errand. That He had forced them to leave Egypt, which they now looked at as a land of prosperity and peace, not remembering the centuries and centuries of bitter slavery. That God had forced them to trek through this dry and wasted wilderness, and for what? To face giants, and there was no hope of conquering. And again, because negativity spreads easily than positivity, which is what we've seen here, an anguished wail broke through the crowd. The people rashly, foolishly, and without even thinking, plunged into mourning and bewailing of their miserable fortune. But the 2 spies, Caleb and Joshua, rushed into the midst of the mourning crowd and gave them a different report. Not that they did not deny that there were giants and that these cities were large and they were fortified, but they pointed to God. They remembered God. They focused on God, who had vanquished the Egyptians, drowning them in watery graves. With God on their side, Israelites could take the land. They insisted that with God on their side, nothing was impossible. So here are the main lessons that I take from this chapter. Number 1, Be careful who you spend your time with or what you spend your time listening to. If you spend your time with negative people, if you spend your time listening to negative news or negative information, you will most likely end up being just as negative. As a matter of fact, me, when I get into like a cab, and then the cab driver is just like, oh, the economy, I'm just like, tafadhali, just take me where I'm going. Don't fill my mind with negativity, please. When we're faced with any challenge, this is like lesson number 2. When I'm faced with challenges, if you remove God from that equation, you are surely going to feel like a grasshopper. You're going to feel overwhelmed. So do not, and I repeat, do not take God out of that equation, because no lasting victory exists outside of God. Lesson number 3, faith is not denying the existence of a challenge. Faith is not denying that there is evil in the world. Faith is not denying that the economy is harsh and mafuta imepanda. Faith is not denying that there's a flu going around. Faith is focusing on God despite the existing challenges. Faith is choosing to focus on God despite the existing challenge. So lesson number 1, be careful how you spend your time, who you spend your time with. If you spend your time around negativity, you're most likely going to become negative at the end. When you're faced with any challenge, do not remove God from the equation. And then faith is not denying the existence of a challenge. Faith is not denying the things that are happening around you. Faith is choosing to focus on God despite the existing challenges. This is your girl, Wakeji Kamore, and this has been Reflections by Wakeji Kamore.